Theropod dinosaurs were the apex predators on Earth's landmass for 140 million years. Their diverse lifestyles, morphologies, and range of body sizes allowed them to become the most charismatic group of reptilian predators the world has ever seen. And they still have huge impacts on human culture tens of millions of years after their Nonavian representatives were killed by a cosmic nuke rock. This video series explores what would happen if non-avian theropods from the Mesozoic were placed into the Cenozoic, the age of mammals, discussing their chances of survival continent by continent throughout each epoch of the Cenozoic. This episode, as you likely surmised, analyzes South America. Let's meet the team, who today is sponsored by Brilliant. Maip macrothorax was the first theropod I knew I wanted to include on the list. Hailing from what is now modern Argentina, Maip was an enormous megaraptoran. This theropod group was known for long, thin skulls, sleek bodies, and powerful arms with meat-hook claws, perfect for capturing and trapping struggling prey. Most megaraptorans were about the size of big cats or bears, but Maip tipped the scales at 8 to 9 meters long and over 3 metric tons, scaling up from more complete and smaller relatives. Its name means large torsoed shadow of death that kills with a cold wind, which you could interpret as a menacing start to our lineup. Carnotaurus sastre represents my childhood. By that I mean the massively oversized, roided-out Carnotaurus from Disney's Dinosaur. Still a great movie in my opinion. The real-life Carnotaurus wasn't nearly as big, but at around 2 tons and almost 8 meters long, it certainly was no pushover. It's the most famous of the abelosaurids, or murder sausages, and if its legs were actually proportioned like those of its more complete cousins, it would have been a speed demon as well. It's also almost always red and black in paleomedia. What's up with that? Giganotosaurus carolinii is the team's very heavy hitter. The contest for the world's heaviest theropod pretty much just consists of Giga and Tyrannosaurus muscling for first place, while big spinosaurids and other megacarchs float vaguely around the second place electron cloud. Recent volumetric analyses of the Giganotosaurus holotype indicate a mass in excess of 8 tons, but a 2025 study that found we've been underestimating dinosaur soft tissue implies a bigger animal. Either way, it's a bipedal predator the size of a very large bull African bush elephant, and its neck and jaw structure permitted it to take rapid bites out of its prey. Whether or not it was the second or first biggest theropod doesn't impact how incredibly cool of an animal this was. You probably knew this, but Giga is yet another Argentinian all-star. Aucasaurus garridoi is just a little guy, with really little arms. From Argentina. At about 700 kilograms fully grown, it's only the size of a large polar bear. It's mainly here because A, the team needed some representation from the wee theropods, and B, abelosaurids are awesome and we can always use one more. Irritator challengeri rounds out the squad as a semi-aquatic predator of medium size, taking on a niche none of its teammates would ever think about. It's Brazilian, which makes it the only theropod not to be from Argentina. It weighed right around 1,000 kilograms, still in extremely big bear territory, and could rapidly open and expand its jaws to snap up fish in a pelican-like striking motion. Its brilliant skills in fishing should help it find a niche in every epoch of the Cenozoic, provided there are fish to be found. That brings us to today's sponsor, Brilliant. See what I did there? Brilliant is a learning app designed to help you practice practical concepts with hands-on examples and activities. You get the advantages of high-quality education without the boredom or foot-tapping of a classroom lecture. By using a system that encourages daily activities and keeping track of your progress with gamified experience points, Brilliant can help you learn important concepts about science, mathematics, and engineering without feeling dull or stuffy. Each daily session only takes a few minutes and can elevate your day by waking up your brain and encouraging critical thinking. I'm a fan of their science courses, which help you understand the foundations of physics, engineering, and the scientific method as you problem solve using real-world examples. This one-of-a-kind learning system helps you feel brilliant and be brilliant. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/Vividen or scan the QR code on screen, or you can click on the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. The Paleocene. Climate. A 2006 paper found the Paleocene of South America to be warm, wet, and lacking seasons, quite similar to the Cretaceous that had just recently ended. We're looking at balmy tropical forests with plenty of freshwater river systems and high primary productivity. Practically vacation for the 5 theropods on our team. As for food, options are quite scarce. Small mammals like Cymolestes, small rhino-like Astrapotheres, and cat-sized marsupials are nothing more than popcorn. Peligrotherium is essentially the rodent of unusual size from Princess Bride. About 1.5 meters long, it was in a bizarre clade of mammals called Cladotheria that weren't marsupials, weren't placental mammals, and weren't monotremes. They were edible though. Matsoya bai was a 9 to 10 meter, 300 kilogram snake that smaller theropods might eat from time to time. There's also Necrosuchus, which was a crocodilian of uncertain size but has too cool of a name not to at least mention once. The biggest prey items would be large dirosaurids in the waterways like Carnotaurus, a 4 to 6 meter carnivorous reptile that may be both food and competition. Carbonemys was a giant 1.8 meter shelled freshwater turtle that Giganotosaurus may wade into the rivers to eat. Titanoboa would also be great for the medium to large theropods. At over a metric ton, it was a powerful predator, but was also slow at that size and would be relatively easy pickings for animals like Maip or Giga. Threats in competition included the Brevirostrine, or short-snouted dirosaurids for very young theropods, most notable of which would be the 5-meter Anthracosuchus balragus.
This foe is beyond any. Run!
Sebecid crocodilomorphs like Brettosuchus would also be a threat to young theropods. Brettosuchus was a 4-meter terrestrial apex predator that would have contested theropods for small to medium prey. This would put it in conflict with Aucasaurus mainly, which it would have been somewhat physically comparable to. Titanoboa would also be a threat to smaller theropods and could have swallowed many of them whole, although it may not last long thanks to predation from the heavy hitters. Verdict: the biggest issue is food. There are no predators that would cause significant predation threats to the theropods, but a lack of big dinosaurian prey like hadrosaurs and sauropods is definitely felt. The heavy hitters like Giganotosaurus, used to hunting animals in its own league of body mass, would be forced to specialize in hunting the giant snakes and turtles like Titanoboa and Carbonemys, perhaps becoming more adapted for a semi-aquatic lifestyle. Irritator, as an already water-loving predator, wouldn't struggle finding fish, and is big enough that it can throw its muscle around when butting heads with native fish hunters like Dirosaurids. Megaraptorans and Abelisaurids were already specialized for taking down small to medium game, so Maip, Aucasaurus, and Carnotaurus would likely focus on hunting Astrapatheres and marsupial relatives. We'd expect to see a general decrease in body size across the team, but thanks to the big snakes and turtles, the giant members do better than expected. They pass, and get to respawn at the beginning of Level 2. Eocene. Climate. Liu et al. 2020 shows that South America during this time period was 4 to 14 degrees Celsius warmer than today, quite comfortable for theropods that hail from a toasty clime. We're still in the jungles, sauna, and endless vegetation era, a great environment for reptilian ambush predators with powerful jaws. Easy money. Food. The lunch menu gets a bit thin here. Gone are the enormous reptilian prey items of the Paleocene. No more car-sized turtles, no more bus-length snakes. The theropods will have to make do with tiny to medium-sized mammals like Archaeohyrax, Didylodus, and Thomas Huxleya, the largest of which ranged up to 110 kilograms. South America during this time period was lousy with notoungulates from the size of domestic cats to pigs, but not anything larger that we currently know of. Threats and competition. Barinasuchus and other smaller sebecids are the Cenozoic's answer to Nonavian theropods, with Barinasuchus reaching masses of 1600 to 1700 plus kilograms and lengths of about 6 meters. That puts it in roughly the same size category as Carnotaurus, and it's bigger than Aucasaurus or Irritator. Barinasuchus hunted the same game that the theropods would be going after, with the exception of the fish-hunting Irritator, and could overpower the smaller ones. Verdict: the smaller theropods carry, but they suffer thanks to competition with Barinasuchus. Irritator is chilling. Giganotosaurus would likely travel north towards bigger prey if possible, and probably starves to death if it doesn't. Maip was built for hunting smaller prey, but at 3 tons may still seriously struggle. They get to respawn and reset for the next level, but barely. Eocene South America just wasn't built to support apex predators on this scale. On to the Oligocene. Climate. Here we see an increase of gymnosperms relative to angiosperms, or non-flowering seed plants versus flowering plants. The Oligocene was 3 to 4 Celsius colder than the Eocene, but still at least the same temperature as modern South America, and still likely warmer. The environments became drier and cooler, perhaps more similar to the semi-arid seasonal floodplains of late Cretaceous Argentina, while being a couple degrees colder. It is by no means problematic, but interesting that in terms of plant life begins to resemble more of the early Mesozoic. The theropods might see more familiar sights, although the menu is anything but. Food. Again, the food is a serious limiting factor. We have tiny animals like Peltophilus, an 11-kilo armadillo, and more medium game like the llama-sized Chromacania, the rhino-like notoungulate Leontinia, and the snake Matsoya. Bigger prey options include Astrapatheres, Pyrotherium, a cow-sized Pyrothere, and Scaritia, a cow-sized rhino-horse-like mammal. Basically, cows are the ceiling for this time period, a fact that makes Giganotosaurus very upset. The Abelisaurids and Maip are pretty happy though, since they're in the size range to get meaningful calories from these critters while also easily hunting them. Threats and competition are fairly sparse, at least in terms of newcomers. Australohyena was a 70-kilogram Sparacidont that could have caused problems for very young theropods, but wouldn't have much of an impact. Barinasuchus is incredibly successful and still around. Verdict: The Oligocene is definitely an improvement from the Eocene. There are more large mammals to eat with relatively minimal defenses. Competition with Irritator continues, and Giganotosaurus probably still just up in leaves since there's so little food for it. The Abelosaurids and Megaraptorans are absolutely cleaning house, and Irritator is happy, as always. Now how about the Miocene? Climate. The uplift of the Andes begins in the Miocene, creating towering mountain ranges over a period of millions of years. Cooling continues, with a mean annual temperature of 8 to 12 Celsius, and summer temperatures notably higher. There was also an increase in temperature again towards the middle of the Miocene. Given that dinosaurs of small to large size thrived in latitudes as high as polar Alaska in the Cretaceous, temperatures well above that would not likely prove to be an issue. Food. We see assorted rodents like Eocardia and Litoterns like Diadiaphorus. There are too many small species to list off, making sure that there's not a shortage of small prey items. That includes various glyptodonts like Eleutherocercus and Parapapalehoplophoros, which is also known as Medium game has more options, like toxodontids, astrapotheres, big ungulates, and leotinids like the 800-kilogram Wheelotherium. Giant ground sloths show up in the form of the 1-ton Ionolotherium, and Stupendemus is a 2-plus-ton freshwater turtle that might be a tempting meal for an adventurous Giganotosaurus. The centerpiece of the menu, though, is easily Granistrapotherium, a 3 to 4-ton animal that superficially resembles a Gomphothere but wasn't closely related. Its underdeveloped tusks would do little to dissuade a Carcharodontosaur more than twice its size, and it would likely fall prey to Maip as well. Threats and competition is where the Miocene really picks up its game. Boar hyena was not a hyena, but it was a carnivorous mammal about the size of a medium dog and could have picked off hatchling theropods. Phorusrhacids, or terror birds, appear, and despite also being dinosaurs, wouldn't have welcomed the non-avian theropods into their domain. The very biggest were still less than half the mass of Aucasaurus, but they were much faster and would have dominated the rapid predator niche. They'd make it difficult for Aucasaurus and Carnotaurus to hunt the small and medium game in open areas, encouraging them to bulk up and eat bigger mammals. Argentavis was an enormous Teratoran that may have mixed hunting with scavenging, and could have used its huge wings to scare small theropods off their kills. Borinosuchus, again, is incredibly successful and provides plenty of pressure on the smaller theropods. Purosaurus in the waterways would absolutely eat Irritator if given the chance, as well as eat many of the fish that Irritator wanted. Some more river predators that might cause problems include Murasuchus, a 4 to 6 meter bizarre spike-nosed caiman, and Stupendemus, the giant turtle that bigger theropods might pick on. Verdict. Overall, the theropods would be fairly successful in the Miocene. Although lots of competitors are present, there's also a huge diversity of prey types and sizes, and each of the team members would be able to find its own niche. The Abelosaurids would likely be the least successful given the advent of terror birds combined with big cebechids, but I don't see them going extinct. To the Pliocene. Climate. The climate of Pliocene South America was typically humid and warmer than today. A 2018 pollen study found that 5 principal landscape types dominated the continent: lowland rainforest, lower montane forest, upper montane forest, Paramo, and broad-range taxa, with the Andes having experienced significant uplift by the beginning of the epoch. The theropods would be looking at a warm, tree-thick environment with the option of mountainous regions if they needed more arid areas. There's plenty of room to expand. Food. The menu of the Pliocene is excellent in terms of both biodiversity and size ranges. At the very small end, we see rabbit-like metatherians like Argyrolagus, giant anteaters, capybaras, and peccary relatives. Medium prey include the lion-sized raccoon-like procyanid Chapalmalania, along with large horse relatives, giant pampatheres, half-ton capybaras, huge toxodontids, and ground sloths up to 1.5 tons. Macrauchenia is a 1-ton short-limbed camel-like ungulate that would be a feast for the Abelosaurids. There's even a fine selection of large prey, including Erymatherium, Lestodon, and Megatherium, ground sloths that range from 1,200 to 6,000 kilograms. Cuvieonius was a 3.5-ton Gomphothere that would make a great meal for Giganotosaurus. Threats and competition are not to be underestimated here. Chapalmalania, which might be prey, could also be a big problem for smaller or younger theropods. Think about how problematic raccoons are for chickens, and then make it the size of a lion. Granted, it's getting destroyed by adults of any of the theropod species, but it wouldn't be after the adults. Devincentia was a hugely robust terror bird and would be putting pressure on the faster theropods as it went after quick, agile prey. Morasuchus and Crocodylus falconensis still prowl in the waterways where Irritator would be hunting, and Stupendemus would likely be eating similar fish. Verdict. The menu is really what helps the theropods out here. They no longer have competition from giant cebechids, although the terror birds are a pain, but there are so many types of large-bodied prey that any competition doesn't put a significant dent in their hunting. Ground sloths are excellent prey options with their slow speeds and high meat yield, although only Maip and Giganotosaurus would be likely to attack them. The Pliocene is a great time, and the theropods survive just fine. They unlock the final stage, the Pleistocene. Climate. The early Pleistocene of South America went through glacial cycles that lasted around 40,000 years, with glaciers typically limited to the Andes and southern Patagonia. Most of the continent was covered by evergreen trees like Araucaria during glacial periods, and switched to majority grasslands and semi-deciduous tree cover during interglacials. The water table decreased in the last glacial maximum, and glaciers covered in the Andes. Forests and grasses are reduced in overall coverage across the continent, with lots of Paleo-Aeolian features like dunes and wind-carved rock formations. It will look a lot more similar to the late Cretaceous arid environments that many of our theropods were used to. It never reached the truly frigid climate of North America during glacial periods, but in high latitudes and southern extremes would have been relatively inhospitable towards megafauna, given the ice coverage and lack of readily available food. The theropods would likely crowd towards the center of the continent during glacial periods, following the large prey animals. Food. The food for the Pleistocene is almost identical to the Pliocene. That is to say, extremely rich in options, from the anteaters, capybaras, and giant peccaries to the absurd diversity of 1 to 5 ton ground sloths. Macrauchenia is still around, Toxodon is still the equivalent of fast food, and Gomphotheres are top-end meals that would be easy prey for Carnotaurus twice their size. New additions for the Pleistocene include 200 kg or 440 pound llamas, and Didicurus, a 1400 kg or 3080 pound glyptodon with weaponry out of a nightmare. Only the very bravest or biggest theropods would take on this spiritual successor of ankylosaurs, and would need to do so by attacking the head and crushing it before the glyptodon could bring its morningstar tail into the fight. Horses are still a valid option for the faster theropods like Carnotaurus, with Equus neogeus reaching 400 kg, well into the tasty snack range. Again, there are more species of giant ground sloths that are practical to even mention, and the big theropods are certainly equipped to take them down and take advantage of their protein-packed bulk. Threats and competition get interesting in the Pleistocene. Arctotherium angustidens was a giant relative of the modern spectacled bear, and at the very top end may have reached up to 1,200 kilograms. That would put the very biggest specimens in Irritator territory, while being quite a bit smaller than Carnotaurus and dwarfed by the heavy hitters. It was an omnivore that focused on meat, and could have pushed around Aucasaurus and potentially Irritator from time to time, but would also get bullied by them in turn. The biggest sources of competition are large cats. Smilodon populator, along with cougars and various species of jaguars, are known for taking on prey their own size or bigger and are highly agile. They'd be most likely to be in direct competition with the Abelosaurids and Irritator, going after the same medium-sized prey. Jaguars and Smilodon in particular were known to hunt caimans, and may spring at the opportunity to attack juvenile or subadult Irritator as well. Their powerful paws and jaws, as well as the killing method of biting behind the brain, work well on caimans, although they'd certainly have a harder time dealing with a 1-ton bipedal carnivore with powerful claws. Parental care pending, their infant mortality may notably increase in areas with big cats. Dire wolves entered South America towards the end of the Pleistocene, and these possibly social predators were used to hunting large prey. They hunted animals as large as bison, and may have gone after the smaller ground sloths, big capybaras, and very young Gomphotheres, potentially straining resources that Aucasaurus and Carnotaurus would be after. The biggest potential threat to our South American theropods would be Homo sapiens. Modern humans entered South America from North America between 16,000 and 14,000 years ago, towards the very end of the Pleistocene. After the last glacial maximum, when the continent began to warm up again, we find a high density of fluted or fishtail projectile points, as well as a notable spike in megafaunal species followed by a catastrophic decline. There are signs of human consumption of a significant portion of the megafauna that we pointed out would be great food items for the theropods, including the big Gomphotheres and ground sloths. When the megamammals began to disappear, so did evidence of the fishtail points used to hunt them, as they were supposedly no longer needed. This effect was most notable in the Andes, a trend that I think would be exaggerated in a theropod scenario. Humans, even with the ability to hunt megafauna, were still fairly risk-averse, and most likely would congregate in the Andes and other mountainous regions while leaving the theropods to hunt megamammals in the lowlands. We'd see a Skull Island kind of differentiation, where the humans have safe areas they can hunt their prey in, while respecting the natural territories of predators that require extreme effort and danger to kill. A point raised by a 2021 paper is that these big mammals were so adversely affected by human hunting is their low reproductive rates, a factor that would be difficult for theropods to deal with as well as their primary predators. Given how quickly the megafauna went extinct after the last glacial maximum, our theropod team, particularly Maip and Giganotosaurus, would find themselves without reliable food sources and may follow them into the dark. The medium theropods left behind, Aucasaurus, Carnotaurus, and Irritator, would be left to eat the scraps like tapirs, likely shrinking over time. If I had to bet which one would last the longest, it would be Irritator. They'd be mostly safe from jaguars thanks to their stance and size, and may outcompete caimans as the dominant semi-aquatic predators. The abelisaurids, while far more physically powerful than any mammalian predators on the continent, are best suited for wide open spaces, and may not thrive in the widespread jungles of modern South America. Perhaps they'd hunt in the pampas and campos, focusing on speed to catch pampas deer and shrinking down to match the lower available calories. So, could Nonavian theropods survive the Cenozoic of South America? The answer appears to be yes, for the vast majority of the Cenozoic anyway. The Paleocene, Eocene, and Pleistocene had food shortages that caused problems for the larger theropods. The biggest non-human threats to theropods seem to be other theropods in the form of terror birds, along with cebecids like Barynosuchus and big cats like Smilodon and jaguars. There weren't any native herbivores that were capable of effectively resisting the heavy hitters, especially Giganotosaurus, which was more than twice the size of the biggest South American land mammals and was used to hunting animals much larger than that. It seems to be a theme in this series that it's less of a question if these theropods could survive what the Cenozoic could offer, and more if they're too much for the Cenozoic to even handle. Turns out, giant predatory dragons have a big impact on the environment. Who knew? Thank you again to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to visit brilliant.org/Vividen for a 30-day free trial and to save 20% on an annual premium subscription. Let me know what videos you'd like to see next, as well as how I can continue to improve. The channel is really blown up in 2025, and I am thrilled by your support. Please feel free to join the channel as well to help elevate my work. You can receive loyalty badges and shoutouts at the Raptor tier, and additional early access to videos at the Mega Theropod tier. I'm the Vividen, and I'll see you next time.